What's going on YouTube? My name is Benny. Welcome back to another video. Today is going to be just a tad bit different. Thank you to Jay Lynette, who I actually have her video up right here. I will also link it in the description. She inspired me to do this and kind of go over my CD collection a bit. I was going to use my actual Kodak camera, but my rechargeable batteries in here just took a shit, so I'm gonna use my cell phone, so I apologize for that. Also, I know my nails look jank, okay? I know they're chipped. I've had them on for 2 weeks, and a lot can happen in 2 weeks, okay? So just give me a break. But yeah, we're gonna cut to me right back there. Okay, so I also wanted to start with something that Jay Lynette started with, and it was introducing the actual device she used her CDs on. Wait, her CDs with, her CDs to play her CDs on. Okay, yeah. English! It's this right here. I know it looks kind of basic. What is this? But I thought it was super cool. It reminded me of like my childhood CD players that had all like the little fancy stuff built in with an alarm and a clock and everything. Shout out Guilt Trip, I'll go over that one later. But I thought it was pretty cool. Not only that, but you saw that it opened in the front. I love like the button layout on this and the dials. You can actually see the CD spinning when it's playing, and it has like a cool little slant to it. And there's 2 speakers, one on either side, so you get like a really good volume for this small little thing. So I thought it was pretty cool. I got it for like $10 on Facebook Marketplace. So as you know, I do have a few vinyls around the room. This is my, cheapo little vinyl player. This guy here, it's a Crossley, but I didn't know when I got it that they did not send a needle. Damn camera won't focus, but there's no needle in there. So I haven't actually been able to play anything on this yet, sadly. But I do have it for when I do get a replacement needle, so that's cool. Again, shout out to Jay Lynette. Thanks for the video idea. This is awesome. Alright, so I'm sorry my laundry isn't done. My life is in shambles. This is the very beginning of my CD case. Normally, a lot of people use like an actual shelving unit or keep things in the actual case. But I just don't have the room. I mean, my room is fairly small. My mom used to collect all of her CDs in an actual booklet like this, and I wanted one specifically where you can actually tuck the little CD sleeves into, and this one does the trick. So I have these all separated by genre. I'm just going to kind of race through them and point out ones that are my favorites. So starting out, this is like some Christian stuff that I grew up with. These are pretty good records. I still have them occasionally in rotation. This one makes me cringe so hard now, but I just can't get rid of it. So these are all my classics. Grew up listening to the Beatles, of course, Pink Floyd, Metallica, Black Sabbath, all that good stuff. I know a lot of people hate on Greta Van Fleet, but I love them. My favorite song of all time is actually on this album. And it's called The Barbarians. Also, Johnny Winter is one of my favorite guitar players of all time. I feel like he's really underrated. He's definitely up there with Jimi Hendrix for sure. This is a great record if you haven't heard it. It's his self-titled. The standouts are, of course, Be Careful with the Fool and Mean Mistreater. Those are great songs. So next is kind of like my indie pop influence kind of songs. So, best Faye Webster album right here for sure. This band is called Rehash. If you haven't heard of them, this is actually their alternate cover for their album Morning Star. One of the best albums of the past 10 years for sure. I did not like Guts, I can't even lie, but her debut is great. A lot of people also hate on Imagine Dragons. I do not care. I actually have the Evolve logo tattooed on me, but Smoke and Mirrors was one of the best albums I've ever heard to this day. So don't hate just because you've heard Believer or something. Like, this record is really their most creative and captivating one for sure. Hanson, I know a lot of you know them for like MMMBop, but this album was some of the best like jazz rock I've ever heard. It was so good. And then, you know, gotta have a classic in there, you know, an album that I grew up with. And now we're getting into 21 Pilots. I own all of their records, at least the ones, you know, that they've put out on CD, except for their self-titled album from 2009. So we're starting with Vessel. If you don't know, I'm also a huge clicky, so like rap, hip-hop, boom-bap kind of shit. Mac Miller. This album was incredible. Swimming was such a great record. Isaiah Rashad is great. I know a lot of people listen to him, but I feel like he's not talked about enough. But this album was super, super well done. I got this before Drake turned into a freaking weirdo, so sorry. This is my favorite Future album. I know that's a little different, but I thought he was just really in his element and really came off like he didn't give a fuck in the best way. Getting on to Juice WRLD, I picked out my favorites from him. My favorite posthumous album from him was Fighting Demons. Legends Never Die is good, but I don't think it aged as well as this one did. And Death Race for Love was my favorite when he was around. And then Lil Peep, of course. California Girls was the EP that introduced me to him. But the posthumous album Part 1 that came out recently, I think was his best posthumous work because it is all stuff that dates back to the earliest times of his career, so I think that's why I like it the most. And then, of course, I got my favorite Suicide Boys albums in here. You know, not going to go into too much detail of that. Everybody loves Suicide Boys now. And we're getting now into the divorced dad rock territory. This is stuff that my dad introduced me to, or my grandpa, you know, grandparents, I should say, have introduced me to. Collective Soul, this is their best record. Still to this day, this is one of my favorite albums of all time for Matchbox 20. A lot of people don't really know this album from Spin Doctors, Turn It Upside Down, but this is where they also got a lot more jazzy and creative and groovy with their instrumentals. I actually have the poster pull out from the album on my wall right there. Creed, Human Clay was my personal favorite, but gotta have the greatest hits. I really, really, really want to point out this CD. If you've never heard of this band, Crooked X, they only put out one EP and then this album. And then one of their band members sadly passed away, and the band broke up and just disappeared off the face of the earth. They didn't go on to form like another side project or another band, nothing. But this was a gem. I found it at a thrift store. But they toured with bands like Disturbed. Like, they were definitely about to be the next big like rock band, and sadly that came to a screeching halt. But this is just their self-titled album. If you can get your hands on it, dude, it's definitely a rarity. This one is such a great record. Of course, gotta have the Breaking Benjamin Phobia with the DVD combo. That one's a banger. Grew up with that one also. Same with this one. And I know I've shit on Skillet a lot, but yep, this just proves I was a Skillet fan at one point. And there's that as well. Yeah, I used to definitely be a panhead, unfortunately. But now we're getting more into the punk rock, alternative, emo, I guess, territory. So, of course, my favorite album by Green Day. The best Paramore album. The best Fall Out Boy album. And Meet Me at the Altar, they're signed to Fueled by Ramen now. But I've been following them since like 2016, 2017. If you're a real fan of them, you know the Red Walls EP that they released. I think that was their very first release under Meet Me at the Altar, and it is no longer anywhere on any platform that they have. So I've been following them since then. Real Friends, this one is probably my favorite Real Friends record. Their old singer was incredible, but I feel like the songwriting and song structure just got so much better when they got their new guy. And this album really came at a perfect time for me, too. And then the Home Team, they've been around for a couple years. I love this record. It's fun. You know, it's catchy. And then we kind of now get into the little more metal-y side of alternative rock music. So we got Flyleaf, and this actually was not a bad record when they got their new singer after Lacey Sturm left. I thought this was a natural, really good progression for the band on Between the Stars. And then there's a couple Face Down Records bands here. My Epic, this is actually my favorite My Epic CD. And then we got Poppy. Now we're getting into more post-hardcore. I know my selection is kind of small in this area. So we got Seosen, translating the name, a classic. Some would say a foundational EP in the post-hardcore scene. Seosen, as you all know, is never the same after Anthony left. But we did get Circa Survive out of it. So one of my gateway albums, Sleeping with Sirens, of course, with Ears to See and Eyes to Hear. Comrades, they're 2 CDs on Face Down. I've talked about them in great length in their own video. So if you haven't seen that video on Comrades yet, I'll link it up here. But please go check it out. And then my favorite Pierce the Veil album. I know a lot of people are in love with either Selfish Machines or Collide with the Sky. But I think this album was their coolest conceptually, lyric-wise, as well as instrumental-wise. I think this one just blew me away the most, honestly. Fleshwater, you know, the new age Deftones, I guess. I love this band, and this album is great. I hope they're giving us a new album soon. It's been a little while. So now we're into a little more shoegazy nu metal territory. We got Movements, Feel Something. That's a classic. Everybody knows that. Off-Road Minivan. If you don't know, this band is actually Tuck's side project from Fit for a King. And this was the first release they came out with. And every single song on this EP is some of the greatest I've ever heard in the genre. Never Easy. Shout out to these boys. They actually signed it for me, too. I did work for Numb from this band. I did some graphic design work for him for his studio in Canada called Visceral Sound Studio. Great dude and really good music all around, and the direction they're going now is really, really cool. Gotta have some Glare in there, and then, you know, gotta have my 2 favorite Deftones album. You know, of course, everybody knows Around the Fur, but my all-time favorite Deftones record is Saturday Night Wrist. This album came out the year my sister was born, 2006. And this is kind of the one that I grew up with more. And then Chevelle, Wonder What's Next, also grew up with this one. And I have a signed copy of it, which is pretty freaking sweet. Sadly, I didn't meet him. I just bought the signed copy. But it's still pretty cool. Now we're getting into nu metal. Early 2000s classics, okay? We got Evanescence, Fallen. This is still one of the greatest, most influential nu metal albums to ever be written. The Open Door from Evanescence was meh compared to this, which is sad, but I still own it because there's a couple good tracks. Of course, the first 2 debut and sophomore albums from Linkin Park. You know, we don't need to talk about that too much. Everybody knows why they're incredible. And then I grew up with this album from Disturbed, so I just had to have it, man. It's not the best nu metal of all time, but it is some of the most nostalgic for me. And then this is Issues, but I got an alternate cover of one of the 4 contestants of the contest that they held for the album artwork, and this was one of the final results, so I thought that was pretty cool, a nice little rare find. We're kind of getting more into the metal section now, so if you've never heard of this band, Red, I'm sure you have. They are semi-mainstream, but not talked about as much as, like, you know, modern-day metal bands, unfortunately. But Red is one of the most consistent and talented bands that I have ever heard still to this day. I've been following them since 2013 with the release of this album. But everyone they've made, you know, maybe besides Gone is you know, 10 out of 10. And then, you know, gotta have Sleep Token in there. Take Me Back to Eden, great album. I don't care what elitists say. And then Spirit Box, I think this is their best work. I'm not a huge fan of the new album, Tsunami Sea, but I think the Fear of Fear was their peak, in my opinion. And then, of course, Beartooth, one of my gateway bands as well. This EP was one of the greatest Red Bull records ever put out, to be honest. I kind of stopped following them after Below. Now they're getting more into Sirius XM radio rock territory. But, you know, is what it is. Caleb Shomo's happy, and he's clean and recovered, so no hate. The ones that I go back to from the Christian metalcore scene are the Fit for a King records. Dark Skies is a classic, and then The Path was a great follow-up. For All Eternity, this was their last album, The Will to Rebuild, and this one is a banger, dude. Same thing with Prettiest of Things by Earth Groans. I'm actually friends with Jeremy from this band on Facebook, which is pretty cool. This is The Flood, the deluxe reissue, and then Defy. Now I like Of Mice and Men more with Aaron Pauley as the lead vocalist, but this was my favorite work with Austin Carlisle. And then now we're getting into Wage War, so of course Blueprints, Pressure, Manic, and then I didn't buy their new album because it sucked. This is probably, besides Comrades, my favorite band signed to Face Down. This is Deathbreaker. This is their debut, Disconnect, and this is their sophomore, Isolate. They haven't come out with anything since. I hope to get new stuff from them because it'd be pretty freaking sweet. Of course, you know, a Warped Tour classic about that life. If you haven't heard of this band, Resistor, they mix like hardcore beatdown with metalcore with new metal. It's awesome, dude. This thing is a masterpiece. All 4 tracks are so kick-ass. And then this is another great local band in the Tampa Bay area, Dead Weight. This was their debut EP. Really, really good. I picked this up at a show. This is Dealer. I know a lot of people have, you know, certain feelings about Dealer. You know, I have my convictions and feelings about it, but this is too great of a record to kind of let escape from my collection. It's just the most raw and emotional, but really like reflective and profound we've ever seen Dealer. So I was just really impressed. I'm just going to leave it there. So August Burns Red, Guardians. I actually don't have any other August Burns Red records, but for this one, I do have it signed on my wall, which is pretty cool. I do need to get my hands on more ABR records, though, because, you know, I grew up on Constellations and Leveler and stuff, so. And then this is Bleed Yourself by Mouth for War. I did see them in concert right before they came out with this, and then right after this album came out, they went on a permanent hiatus, so, and gave no reason. So we don't know if we're ever going to get anything new from them. And now we're getting into the more deathcore, hardcore section, I guess. So, of course, Knock Loose, A Different Shade of Blue, and their new record. I can't listen to this as much anymore because of how overplayed it is on the metal side of Instagram. People just won't stop posting on their stories or putting in a reel or whatever, so I often revisit A Different Shade of Blue more than I do this record. After Mitch, this is my favorite Suicide Silence record right here. Most consistent and most creative that they were since the passing of Mitch, I think. Dying Wish, of course, 10 out of 10 record. I don't think they could have done any better. I don't think anyone could have asked for any better. This thing is a pure masterpiece, which is also why I have it as a flag on my wall. Gimmick, of course, I made a whole video about them. This album was also incredible. It's still available on their website. I think it's $5 right now. You guys need to go pick that up. It's awesome. But this one was also another big one for the scene over the past few years. So Guilt Trip, this one is like a UK-based band. And I actually didn't find out about them until this album. This is one of my favorite albums of all time, dude. The songwriting, the singing, the new metal inspiration that's in so many hooks and choruses of this record. Oh, just absolutely flawless. This is Ramtha, Through the Eyes of Death. Shout out to Morbid Subculture, the production company for this CD. Really cool people worked with me through the whole process of when I ordered this. I was going to say this is like the compilation section, but I only have 2 compilations. And one is from the Stranger Things series, and one is from Solid State. I found this for 50 cents at a thrift store, dude. This is from like 2005, I think. These are all of my CD covers here in the back. I kind of keep, all the ones that I don't hang up, all together. In the back here, because I just can't make myself get rid of them. That's my whole collection there. So thanks for checking it out with me. Back to the computer. I just think collecting physical media is so cool, dude. To physically hold in your hands an album that influenced you in some way or affected your life in some way is just like a whole different kind of connection to that music, you know what I mean? Plus it like supports the artists, Streaming services are already paying our favorite artists and bands shit, so you can directly support them. Ew, why does my hat look like that? Hold up. Like a frat, bruh. Yeah, directly buying a CD from your favorite artist helps support them more in some ways than streaming services would. Also, if you want to keep up with my collection, I don't have any friends or mutuals on the Discogs app. It's Ben 10 Jenkins, and you guys can keep up with my collection there. I update it every time I get something new, and it'd be really cool to connect with some of you on there and share some interests over what we have in our collections. So that was my CD collection. Thank you guys so much for taking a few minutes to go through it with me. If you guys have any more recommendations for my CD collection or would like to see more content like that, just let me know. But if you did like this video, check out my other ones or watch my next one. Have a great day.